Welcome to Five or Flop, a podcast for the best and worst historical fiction has to offer. I'm your host, Erin.
And I'm Grace, and each week we'll be reading a different historical fiction book to see if they're a five or a flop.
Our theme for season 5 is family and friends, but this week we don't actually have any family or friends because we're at the final 2 episodes of the season, which is when Grace and I pick the books.
We did not want to let everyone else have all the fun, and really, if you think about it, we are each other's family and friends.
Exactly. So Grace, what are we reading and why are we reading it?
We are reading The Red Tent by Anita Diamant. So obviously, when I knew it was my turn to pick a book, there are a lot of historical fiction books that I love that I kind of put on my short list, under consideration. Mm-hmm. And I picked this one because this is a best-selling book from a decent period of time ago. It came out in 1997, the same year I was born.
Did it come out in 1997? It's that old? Not calling you old, but...
No, it's pretty old. I thought about maybe doing a repeat author. You all know I love Emma Donoghue. Mm-hmm. But the thing that sealed The Red Tent for me is we haven't had anything else relatively close to this time period. So we're going all the way back to the biblical era, mm-hmm. I guess. I don't know what exactly to call it. But I just thought that would be good to round out the season. Yeah. And it's a book that I love.
Yeah, no, I was excited to read it. I had actually picked this up at Mackay's bookstore well in advance of us setting this book list. So I think when we had ourselves and our guests each put like 2 or 3 options for the season just to make sure we were getting a balance of cultures and time periods. And I think I told you I specifically want to do this because I have a copy of it.
I completely forgot that you already had a copy of it. So great. That actually worked out for me well. The book that you picked for us to read next week, I won't say what it was. Mm-hmm. I also already had a copy of that. So I got to check off something from my TBR, which I am badly needing to work on this year.
Well, good thing we're almost at the end of the season.
Thank goodness.
I'll let you start with what's been new because you had an annual and much more exciting weekend than I did. And I believe this will be our 3rd pod episode talking about it.
Yes, and a book-themed weekend. It was the Savannah Book Festival. So my mother and I went. We had a delightful time. The trip there and back is pretty easy, direct from DCA, mm-hmm. although I feel like DCA is a scary place now, but it is what it is. Also, always nice to escape the freezing cold and ice.
Most importantly, I have many questions about your weekend, but to start us off, how was the weather?
It was about 55.
Oh my God. And that is so, you know what? It's like above freezing by like 2 degrees, and walking over to your place, I was starting to sweat.
No, we are not going to have a good time leaving my place to go grocery shopping when we're done recording.
No, not at all. But I'm glad you got to enjoy 55 right now. Sounds like beach weather.
Oh, absolutely. I was just wearing a light jacket, like no hat, no scarf, no gloves, mm-hmm. almost like normal winter. I guess not normal winter. That's rude to our northern brethren.
Normal for what we're used to.
Exactly. A mild winter.
Mild winter, yes.
What about you?
I've been doing nothing insane late. I mean, again, as I said last week, it kind of goes along with the whole unemployment thing. I'm trying not to spend money, so I'm really not doing much. But what is really great is that, as our listeners probably know, not only do Santiago and I watch a billion TV shows, we watch a billion movies.
Yes, you do.
And all of the James Bond movies have been added to Netflix.
They weren't there?
No, they were. I think some of them were.
Okay.
But all of however many dozens of them.
Jeez.
From the 60s through current.
Okay.
So this is really fun because A, we don't have to spend money, $4 a movie renting them, because we would not be doing that right now. But also B, I saw Skyfall when it was in theaters. And it wasn't even one I chose to see. Like, my friend and her family were going and were like, do you want to come?
I don't think I've ever seen a James Bond movie now that I think about it.
Turns out Santiago has seen every single one.
Are you serious?
Which I was in shock because constantly he's like, oh, I don't know much about like American pop culture. And I know it's not American, but kind of within the zeitgeist, right?
Yeah. Americans love British stuff.
Exactly. But I forget that he, much like my sister and myself, had a British phase. So we all watched Doctor Who, and I guess he was really into James Bond. So the best part of the movies is we'll finish one and then he'll be like, all right, here's the theme song for the next one. And then he sings it to me. And it is excellent. So right now we just finish up the majority of the Sean Connery era. There's like one with this other guy, and then they have one more with Sean Connery because they like him better, and then he's officially done.
Okay.
So we're like pretty much done. We're in the middle of On Her Majesty's Secret Service, if that means anything to our listeners.
Okay. It probably to some of them.
Probably to Santiago. So.
Exactly. But not to me.
It's been a fun endeavor, and there are movies they're all kind of the same plot structure. You don't have to pay too much attention to them. So we'll watch it in like a couple of sittings. So we watch like several of these a week at this point.
Oh, wow.
So
that sounds wonderful.
It is. It has been a good time. Did you pick up any books while you were in Savannah?
Oh my gosh, I didn't, because I attempted to buy a book. I tried to buy, mind you, a paperback book. Mm-hmm. And I went up to go buy it, and they tried to charge me $48.
Jesus Christ. Was it like a bigger than normal?
No, it was like a 500-page book. So like, Jesus. Yeah, it was long, but it was like, I feel like that's a normal range for a book to be in.
And I mean, all books are outrageously expensive now, but I would expect like nothing more than like $20, $25 for a paperback.
Yeah, and I'm happy to pay a little bit of an upcharge to support the festival, because Festival Saturday is free to all, but not that much.
No, that's a lot of money for a paperback, not even a hardback.
No, but I did enjoy the flight time there and back to be kind of locked down reading my book and trying to finish the book that I had going.
And short enough that you don't have to take any Benadryl on your flight.
Exactly.
So what were you reading?
I was reading a nonfiction book, and it was called Sugar, A Bittersweet History. It was a nonfiction book about sugar, which really is kind of a nonfiction book about the Caribbean and the slave trade. Mm-hmm. So I would definitely recommend it. I don't think this is a very popular book. I picked it up because I have read another nonfiction book by this author before. Oh, okay. But she has family and roots in Antigua, which is obviously a big place that had a lot of sugar plantations back in the day. Mm-hmm. So it really makes you think about our capitalist market and the lengths we were willing to go to get the things that we want.
All right. Lovely.
Yeah.
Lovely. I mean, not like a lovely subject matter, but a lovely to think on and reflect on. Yeah.
What about you?
I'm kind of at a weird place because, yes, I'm reading more with more time on my hands, but I am taking like a million years to get through my audiobooks because I'm not driving. And also, we did just get our car out of the ice, though. So that was big for us.
Oh my gosh. Weekend. That took you like 2 weeks?
Well, we didn't bother with it because we were like, it'll melt. And then it wasn't melting.
Well, still, it shouldn't take 2 weeks, even without trying to get your car out of the ice. The ice should melt on its own.
Exactly. So, yes. So it was awful, but it is out now. So potentially I can listen to audiobooks again. But on the walk up here, I returned to my audiobook journey, and I am on the second Uglies book, which is called Fittingly Pretties.
Whoa.
And I'm a big fan of it. I think it's really kind of in a lot of ways, and this, as you mentioned in a previous episode, this was kind of the precursor to a lot of like young adult dystopian. It goes hand in hand in a lot of ways with the Hunger Games when you think of like the people in the Capitol getting all these extensive surgeries to look beautiful and eccentric and all of this. So it kind of goes along right with that. However, as I'm reading this, I'm like, wow, this is the dystopian book. Like, 100% sign me up for this government. Like, they get everything they want. Like, everything is perfect in society, except they have this surgery that makes them beautiful, and they have, like, something it does to the brain that makes them stupid and compliant with the government. And I'm like, okay, overall,
listen,
there are worse things.
Like, that's the thing about like the Hunger Games and Divergent. All of the people that live in those societies are super miserable all the time, but they're smart enough in Uglies, your evil dystopian overlords, to brainwash you so you're happy.
Exactly.
That's definitely the one that you would want to live in if you had to live in a dystopia.
And probably one of the more effective, governing models there as well.
Make everyone have surgery so that you can put implants in their brains to make you stupid. It's genius.
It also does turn out that there's like 4 or 5 books in this series. I thought there was just 2. So I cannot tell you what is going to happen.
However, now we can watch the Netflix movie together, which is only based on the first book.
And I cannot wait for that. Double feature with Gone with the Wind.
Tonally very similar movies. So great.
It's like when we watched The Color Purple on my birthday.
Yeah. Well, also, as if you can double feature any movie with Gone with the Wind. Gone with the Wind is a double feature.
Or in the same week when we watched Catherine Called Birdie and what was the Rudess of Patty's book we read? Why am I blanking on this? Between Shades of Grey. Except it was called Ashes in the Snow, which is why I was blanking. Okay.
Yes, because famously they were like, there's a movie called 50 Shades of Grey and we don't want to get them confused. And I think that was the right call.
I think that was the right decision.
All right. Should we get back to talking about the Red Tent?
Absolutely.
All right. Here is the synopsis. In the Bible, Dinah's life is only hinted at in a brief and violent detour within the more familiar chapters of the book of Genesis that tell of her father, Jacob, and his 12 sons. The red tent begins with the story of the mothers, Leah, Rachel, Zilpah, and Bilhah, the 4 wives of Jacob. They love Dinah and give her gifts that sustain her through childhood, a calling to midwifery, and a new home in a foreign land. Dinah's story reaches out from a remarkable period of early history and creates an intimate connection with the past. Deeply affecting, The Red Tent combines rich storytelling and the valuable achievement of presenting a new view of biblical women's lives.
All right. I like that synopsis.
Yeah, there we go. So let's talk a little bit about Anita Diamant. She was born in 1951 and after college moved to Boston. She began as a journalist. She wrote at a number of publications. I think we've seen this before in some pod authors that they started off
very
as
common.
journalists.
But I do have to wonder, did she go on the Johnny Sherman walking trail?
Well, she still lives in Boston, it appears, based on her Instagram.
Okay.
So she has had plenty of time to go on it.
Okay, good.
After about 10 years of this, she started writing books, but at first not fiction books. She wrote nonfiction guides to contemporary Jewish life. So she has The Jewish Wedding Now, The New Jewish Baby Book, etc. She has 8 of these. And some of them she has written updates to since her original ones came out in the 80s.
That makes sense.
And then she turned to fiction. The Red Tent was her first novel, like I said, published in 1997. And this is one of the books I checked because I was actually surprised the first time I read this book to get to the end and find out the author was Jewish, because I was like, it's based on the Bible. But Genesis is one of the books that is also makes up the Torah. So I should have known that off the top of my head, but unfortunately I am fake and I did not. So she said, basically, I wanted to write fiction because I've been writing nonfiction for 20 years.
Yep.
And I wanted a new challenge. And obviously that worked out for her. The Red Tent was a bestseller and has been published in 25 countries.
Wow.
In 2014, it was adapted into a miniseries by Lifetime.
Really?
Yes. It was in 2 parts, so it's 4 total hours. Dinah was played by Rebecca Ferguson, who I think might be best known to our audience as the woman who played the singer who has an affair with Hugh Jackman in The Greatest Showman.
I have still not seen The Greatest Showman.
It's really not worth it.
Okay.
But it's just a Hugh Jackman connection. Okay. So there we are.
So therefore applicable to our audience.
Exactly. So she has written 4 other novels, 3 of which are historical fiction. 1, I believe, is contemporary. She has an autobiography, the title of which is Pitching My Tent, which I think is great.
Great.
And she most recently published in 2019 a nonfiction book called Period, End of Sentence, which accompanies the Oscar-winning documentary by the same name about menstrual justice.
Okay, cool.
So I will have a little bit more to say regarding that in the historical accuracy section because I just felt it kind of fit there.
Sure,
So we'll circle back to menstrual justice.
Well, all I have to say on that is really great autobiography title tying back to her first novel.
Absolutely. It came out like 6 years later. So I'm like, you're just trying to boost the sales again, girl. Like, good for you. I hope it worked.
And this one is still, like, I was surprised when I feel like I shouldn't have been surprised, but when I went to log in on Storygraph, like the number of, and I don't have many connections on Storygraph, but the number of my connections who had like already read this book was surprising.
So I guess, it's still very much in the zeitgeist, and I have a few things also to say about that later. So put a pin in all of this. It'll come back.
Great. Well, I have not read anything else by Anita, and I did not know this was a miniseries.
Me neither, until I was doing Googling related to this. But yeah, I have read The Red Tent before, and this was my reread, but I have not read any of her other books.
All right. Let's get into our disclaimer then. Our judgments come based on the book and characters within the book rather than any real historical figures they may have been based on. Spoilers ahead, but this book did come out decades ago.
Yeah. As I recall, based on how old I am, 28 years ago.
All right. Where do you want to start?
Let's start with the characters, because I think that this is really like a little bit how we talked about Cersei, that concept of turning something on its head by focusing on a female perspective. And I think even though this book is not necessarily pushed as a feminist retelling, I think it just is one by the nature of the work that Anita Diamant is doing here.
And by the nature of it being a story about someone's story who is included in the Bible, but not really.
Yeah, who's mostly erased. I looked on her, she has an FAQ on her website, Anita Diamant, and one of the questions was, why did you decide to write about Dinah? And she said, well, first of all, I turned to the Bible for inspiration when I wanted to start writing fiction, because she was like, it's one of the most potent forms of storytelling that we have nowadays. And she initially had planned to write about the relationship between Leah and Rachel, which, reading The Red Tent, you can really tell that interests her, because it's that push and pull concept of two sisters who have the same husband. Yes. Obviously, they are going to have a very interesting dynamic.
And I loved their dynamic.
Oh, yes. And it really did take like 15 to 20 years to settle. Like, they never were fully at ease with each other after they had both married Jacob. But then she decided she was interested in Dinah because her story comes up abruptly and it's extremely gruesome. And then it's dropped and you never hear about her in the rest of the Bible again. So she thought, what happened to her? What was her life like? And this is the result.
Yes. I think I want to talk, just kind of going off the characters, a little bit of the structure of the book. Because pretty much part 1 is about the mothers.
Yes. So that's
Dinah isn't really in it.
No, Dinah is telling the stories of her mothers from before she was born. And you know that their lives are important in shaping hers. Yeah. She is the only daughter. So she is the only one that spent time in the red tent with her mothers.
And I really enjoyed learning about the mothers in so much detail. And the fact that all 4 of them, while Leah was her biological mother, they were all her mother in some sense or the other.
And they were all so different, which is really hard to do. I think juggling how much page time they all have.
Yes.
But they all stuck out as very distinct. And they all had different feelings about each other, about Jacob, about childbirth and their children.
Yep.
They all were so individual, and yet you could see how each one of them separately shaped Dinah as she was born and grew up and was raised by these 4 mothers.
Absolutely. And I thought that was a really interesting way of highlighting the importance of not just Dinah as an individual, but her entire community of women surrounding her. And that theme kind of carried through pretty much even when it's a different community of women when she eventually goes to Egypt.
Yes. And that is the thing that is the most striking to me about this book, is the importance of that community. And we've talked about that already so many times this season. We just talked about it last week with the Persian Pickle Club and the community of those women. But it's so staggering reading this book because there has never been a wider gap between men and women. Like, in the books that we've read before, they are in such different planes that you almost can't. Men and women interacting is very difficult. They have such strict castes of relationships. So the only love and comfort really that the women get is from each other, because it's just harder for them to be in the company of men, even of their husband.
And that's what the red tent is. That's where they go during their period. And they're very much isolated, and men are not. Babies and little kids, boys are allowed, but once they reach a certain age, you are not permitted in there.
Yeah.
And then Dinah always was, even though she wasn't of the age of having her period, she wasn't a woman yet because she was the only daughter.
And they weren't just going to leave her outside to fend for herself.
No, that would be insane.
Make a point of, she has all of these brothers, and she says after they grew up to a certain age, they would not talk to me, they would not play with me. So she really was in the company of her mothers more than anybody else.
I have to be honest, I didn't love this book. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed my time reading it. I'm glad I did read it. It was very day-to-day life for me for a long time, and I couldn't really lock in and be interested until over the halfway point.
Yeah, it's hard sometimes this with books that don't jump right into a plot right away.
Yeah.
Where you either get attached to the characters or you don't. And it's hard to tell sometimes where is this going, because I don't know about you, I was not familiar with the story of Dinah from the Bible before I read this.
I was not either.
Which is, I think, kind of the point, because no one remembers her, and that's why she was written about. But so that is fine. Like, yeah, noted. Fair.
So let's kind of go over like the plot points. Again, this is not a plot-driven novel, but let's go over the plot points. Essentially, so it's all about Dinah's mothers, and then Dinah, she's growing up, and then eventually she meets a man, and they decide to get married, and Jacob and her brothers are very resistant because he is from the city.
Mm-hmm. And crucially, they sleep together before they get married.
Yes. Thank you for rectifying that. And so eventually they're going back and forth on like dowry and bride price, and eventually gets to the point where Jacob's like, okay, you and your men and all the men in your city have to be circumcised as per, our traditions.
Which is just crazy. Like, all of the men in the whole city is crazy.
So they do it. Like, her fiance then becomes husband, agrees, and they do it. And then in the middle of the night, when all the men are like, kind of drugged up, recovering, Dinah's brothers come in and slaughter them all and kidnap all the wives and children and sack the town, pretty much. And it's awful because, like, Dinah, obviously, this was a man she was in love with. It wasn't the brothers were trying to paint it as like, oh, he ruined her honor, we're taking her back. And then Dinah essentially, like, kind of not casts a curse, but like curses them and their family line, and then goes with her husband's mother to Egypt. And she is with child. She has the child, stays in Egypt, becomes a midwife in Egypt, and then eventually goes back as Jacob is dying to her family and finds out like what has become of like her mothers and brothers and all of that.
And her own memory.
Yeah. And the line I found like most poignant in the whole book was Dinah is forgotten in the house of Jacob, when her father doesn't ask for her at all. Like, that was really, I don't know, I thought that was a very strong thematic tie-in to this Bible story of just no one even remembering it.
The ending is so bittersweet because it wraps around, she goes home to see Jacob as he's dying. He doesn't ask for her, doesn't spare her a thought.
Mm-hmm.
But then she sits down with a little girl, and the little girl starts giving her whole family history,
mm-hmm.
not knowing that Dinah is a member of her family. And eventually she starts telling Dinah's story to her, not knowing it's her, as almost like a ghost story, like a fable. And we've talked about how women pass their stories down through their daughters, and that's why they value having daughters so much, because men will grow up and get married and form other families,
mm-hmm.
but your daughters will always carry the memory of their mother.
Mm-hmm.
And so she realizes that not only has she done this for Leah and Rachel and Bilhah and Zilpah,
mm-hmm.
but that basically her story is so shocking and gruesome and terrible that no one will forget it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, wow, we're carrying through this theme of this women's community, but also she's remembered because what happened to her was so striking and terrible.
What I really liked about that scene was the little girl was like, and I'm going to name my daughter Dinah.
Which is so funny because what part of her life do you want your daughter to emulate?
Exactly. It did make me laugh. And I'm like, oh, that's at the same time like very roundabout message. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So a very impactful ending, I thought, given the buildup of themes through the rest of it. And I agree. I actually almost feel the opposite to you. Is I think I enjoyed the beginning more than I enjoyed the part where she was in Egypt,
mm-hmm.
because it felt more directionless to me. That part I think is less is basically made up whole cloth. Like, it's not based on anything in the Bible. Obviously, it's based on research that Anita Diamant did about life in Egypt at the time.
Correct.
But obviously I knew in the reread where it was going to go, but I remember the first time thinking it wasn't going to go anywhere. Or not thinking that it wasn't, but just not knowing where it was going to go.
And just to add on here, better research than Death Comes as the End, I would say.
Death Comes as the End wishes that she was this book.
No, seriously.
Because regardless of what you think about it, whether you like it or you don't, you have to admit it puts you in a time and place.
Yeah.
And Death Comes as the End did not do that.
I actually thought the setting and the details were very reflective of the time period. I used to be very religious. I was a religion major, so I have a good sense of, like, setting in the Bible. So there were parts of this that were definitely not easy to read, gruesome and not easy to read. And I think that's very reflective. And I thought even tonally, this book kind of matched like biblical writing. So I thought that was all very well done.
And I think that when you do have this like really shocking act of violence, obviously it is surprising, but it almost makes sense because they have built up that they live in a world with a lot of cruelty in it. That's just the way that their society functions. Like families pit their sons against each other. They participate in slavery, that there are all of these really coarse deals made in between family members. We see that with Jacob and with Laban.
Yeah.
And so to engage in this type of violence, it doesn't exactly come out of nowhere. And I think that's well set up by Anita Diamant.
Yes, I think so too. I think the setting was probably one of the strongest points of this novel for me.
Mm-hmm. And there were large portions of it that were day to day, both when they were in Canaan earlier in the book and in Egypt later in the book. But there are also several hits of these shocking, impactful, sad moments. The biggest one for me is after she goes to Egypt, Dinah has her son. And then her mother-in-law comes back into the room and is like, he's going to be my son and you're going to be his maid.
Yeah.
And boy, that was so sad because the baby is all that she had left of her husband who's been murdered. And now she doesn't have him either. And they never really form a close relationship.
No, especially once he leaves. Because he probably leaves for schooling when he's
10.
Like, not that old. So it's, I agree. Hard to read.
Yeah.
Or not hard to read, but hard to like reconcile and sit with. Yeah. I did have a question about something that happened, and I don't know, maybe I just didn't, if I missed something or didn't pick up. There's a scene where they go to see her grandmother, and she has become very, very close with her one female cousin, and her grandmother basically kicks the cousin out of the family. Do you remember why that was?
I think so. So there's a lot of discussion about the red tent and about the rites that you perform when a woman gets her first period. And the wives of Jacob worships God in a Christian sense, like the singular God.
The Abrahamic God.
Exactly. But the wives of Jacob have these other gods that they worship, especially Bilhah, who has a goddess who's like I think maternity midwife goddess. But they have strong beliefs about what you do with a woman's first blood and that you keep it and that I think the phrase they use is marry the earth.
Yes.
But this cousin, those rights were not kept for her. So I think she was unable to be like inducted into the house of the grandmother.
Okay.
Because her blood was wasted or something like that.
Okay. I thought it had something to do with like her first menstruation. I just wasn't fully clear on what happened.
Yeah. I think she was like, I can't accept you into my house as a servant.
But that was another moment that was harder for me to sit with too. Like she formed this really, really close bond and then never saw this girl again.
And she never really recovered her relationship with her grandmother either. She stayed there for a summer and then left and then never, like, didn't really think about her again or didn't really want to go back again. But
yeah, for me, like I said, I liked the characters. I didn't really form like enough of a connection for this character driven novel to really work for me. However, I thought thematically and in terms of setting and research, I thought that was all really well done. And I think that carries a lot of weight on a historical fiction podcast because I think we've had a lot of stories I've liked where it's fallen short in other senses.
Well, and I think unless you have anything else to say, maybe we can close it with this thought. This is another example of a pod book that we've read that has abortion tea.
Yes.
And thank goodness for that.
Second one this season, too.
So how many is that total now? Like 4?
We're up to at least 3 that I can name. We had this one, The Frozen River, and The Henna Artist. But I think there was another one.
I was going to say, I swear there was one other one. It must have been last season because it would not have been children's season.
No. We'll think on it.
Yeah, if any of our listeners remember, please let us know.
Abortion Tea Nation rise.
Please.
I do actually have one other comment that's like similar vein.
Great.
But on my crossword puzzles, there's always a clue that says Jacob's brother. And I never remember. And every time I see it, I'm like, damn it, this is the one I don't remember. I know it starts with an E. But now I have confirmation I will not forget that it's Esau. However, I did have to cancel my crossword puzzle subscription for the time being, so I cannot put that to use.
Well, please remember it. And I love that Esau, there's like a club, and it's him, Ayo Edebiri, and Rita Ora that are in the club.
Yeah,
that are always in the crossword puzzles.
The New York Times crossword puzzle editors, love them.
Well, good. I'm glad that's how he will be remembered forever in the House of Jacob.
Absolutely. All right, let's do some historical accuracy because I feel like it's an important one for this.
Yes. So actually, I was like, why don't I read the section of the Bible where it talks about this story if it's so short? And yes, it is short in the context of the Bible. However, it is too long for me to read. So I'm not going to do that. But I will say that in the book, there are like two major changes that Anita Diamant makes. And these are changes not in event, but in interpretation. Mm-hmm. So the first is, I actually didn't write this down because I forgot that it happened until we were discussing, but I know it in my head. So in the Bible, the idea is that when Jacob is going to marry Rachel, Leah switches places with her under the veil, and Jacob is tricked into marrying Leah.
Wasn't that in the book?
Well, in the book, they're like, Jacob knows. Leah is much taller.
Oh, in the book, it was very obvious that, like, they didn't tell him.
Like, he went along with it.
Okay.
But the next day, he was not like, how dare you?
Yep,
like, this is not the daughter that I wanted to marry. So Anita Diamant gives all three of those characters a little bit more agency in that way. And I think kind of humanizes that event. So it's less.
Yeah, it's more realistic.
It's more realistic. And then also in the Bible, Dinah did not fall in love with the prince. She was raped by the prince. Or, as Anita Diamant says, that's the brother's interpretation of what happened.
Yeah, no, I agree with that it's like, assuming the story in the Bible, if you take that as 100% real, very realistically could be like, well, the victors write the history, change the story.
So in one of her things that she had written on her website about the red tent, she said, I reinterpreted it as a consensual event rather than a rape because the rest of the behavior of the prince does not seem like that of a biblical rapist. There are other examples of rapists in the Bible. And afterwards, the prince wants to marry her. He confesses his love for her. He says he will do whatever he needs to do to marry her. He gets circumcised in order to marry her. And Anita Diamant says that just seems to me like more of an example of a loving husband than of a rapist. So in addition to slaughtering all the men of the city, which is spelled Shechem, I don't think I can do the back of my throat like noise that probably is required.
Sechem is probably a bastardized pronunciation of it.
Yeah, I'm sure there's like some Hebrew like going on, and I just am not going to butcher that. So we're going to pass. The brothers loot the city and they kidnap women and children from the city, which is not really part of the book. And in the Bible, this is done without Jacob's knowledge. And it's really spearheaded by Simon and Levi. And that is part of the book. And after this story is told, there is no other mention of Dinah in the Bible after she's brought home from the city, except to mention her in a list of Jacob's children. But you don't know what happens to her. So after that point of the book, you don't hear from her again and you don't know the rest of her story. So then my next biggest thing is about the red tent.
Okay.
So there is no evidence that women at this time in this region used menstrual tents.
Interesting.
Yes. So Anita Diamant openly admits this. This is another Hamnet situation in terms of our artistic license here. So she says there's no evidence that these specific women did, but there were other pre-modern cultures that did use menstrual tents. So she took creative liberty in instituting it here.
Yeah, I think fair enough. I absolutely consider that within our creative liberties licenses.
Yeah. So as a result, I think her name really has been thrown around a lot because she published this best-selling novel titled The Red Tent into all of this current day fight for menstrual justice. So there are a lot of regions that still practice sequestering during the time of your period. And in the book, this is kind of portrayed as a positive thing. Like it's time and space for women to be in community with each other. But in practice, often the conditions are not good and it's just continuing to other women from society instead of bringing us all together. So this is still a common modern day practice in many regions. For example, it was not outlawed in Nepal until 2005 by their Supreme Court.
Mm-hmm.
There was a case in 2021 where famously a woman died trying to light a fire in her menstrual tent when she was cold outside, and she suffocated from smoke inhalation. So to that, Anita Diamant says, the notion of a communal monthly retreat struck a chord with many readers, but when I hear women wax nostalgic for a monthly timeout, I feel obliged to reply that my account has nothing to do with the facts about menstrual sequestration, which for the most part has been and remains cruel and dangerous. So she really does, she doesn't pretend that what she has written is an accurate reflection of modern day menstrual sequestration, which God is a mouthful of a phrase to say. But also, women have started red tent groups inspired by the novel to do what it says, to come together and share communal stories. And to that, Anita says, it's generally a really positive thing out in the world, but I have no real connection to it. When you write a book and send it out into the world, it belongs to the readers. She added that her title in itself conjures a place where women can gather privately, safely, and joyfully to enjoy one another's company. The red tent is a big tent.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. So that was as of 2019. So again, the book had been out for several years, for more than 20 years.
That's fantastic.
And it's still striking a chord with people.
I appreciate that Anita Diamant is so well spoken about this. And, appreciative of the community it's building, but also seems like she has other works out there to maybe educate women a bit more about some of these topics.
Yeah, and I think I consider this going above and beyond what she really has to do.
Yes.
And I think it's great that she wants to do it.
I think so too.
Yeah. So my last little thing, I guess I should have said it before when it fit more thematically in, but when I've talked about Madeline Miller's works in the past, we talked about what archaeological evidence exists to support those narratives.
You truly, I think, have had all of the ancient ones.
I think so.
I think we've only had 3, and I think you've done all of them.
But there is not archaeological evidence for any of Jacob's story, certainly not of Dinah, because no one remembers her, as is the point of the red tent. That doesn't mean it didn't happen, especially I'm going to be careful here to not step toes on people who really and truly believe in the Bible. I'm just saying there's no archaeological evidence. I don't think that means anything. It just means that we don't have proof.
It would make for a cooler historical accuracy section if there was evidence.
Indeed, it would.
We can't do that for all of them.
And even if archaeologists are like, wow, here there were lots of sheep, we don't know whose sheep they were.
Exactly.
So.
All right. Well, thank you for that. I appreciate when we have something we can compare it to, whether it be like our Greek works where we have mythology. I guess also the other ancient ones. Yeah. I like when we have a basis we can compare it to. And I think her changes from the Bible story made a lot of sense for this book. I think they were all the correct changes to make.
I think so too.
And I think the creative liberties she took were well within reason.
Yeah. So should we get into the calculator?
I think we should. All right. Our categories: historical accuracy, originality, characters, prose, and vibes. And since this is your book, would you like to go first or last?
I'll go first.
Okay.
Historical accuracy, I want to give it a 5 because I think it is in the spirit of a 5. I love the way that she uses the history, even down to kind of nitty-gritty things, like the midwife's bricks and stuff like that. However, I think only because it is called the Red Tent, and there is not proof of a red tent existing, I cannot go higher than 4.
Like if Hamnet was called the Plague.
Exactly.
Okay,
if Hamnet was
fair
called
enough.
The Plague, definitely killed Hamnet, and we all know it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
So 4. Originality, I also think I'm going to go 4 because this interpretation of like a woman's story is not the most original thing in the world. But I do think the selection of this character does reflect originality. So I'll give it a 4. I'm going to go 5 for characters because I really did enjoy them all and how fleshed out they were. Prose is another 5 for me. And vibes are 5. So that's a 4.6. And I gave this a 4.75 on Storygraph. So that's a pod 5.
Wow. Okay. I love that. All right. Historical accuracy. Man, I was going to give it a 5 and then you said that. And I think you're right. Like, I think I agree about the red tent.
If it was just one of the things that happened and not the central thing, then I could give it a pass.
I personally don't know what else I would have named the book. Dinah, maybe, I think would have been a strong name. And it doesn't matter. Originality, I am actually going to go 5 for originality because I think I agree with you. I think we see a lot of influx of feminist retellings. However, the counter arguments I would make, this is the first or the earliest dated one I can think of. And every other one I can name is Greek mythology. Mm-hmm. So for that alone, I think it stands for a 5 for me.
Works for me.
Characters. This was one of the books where I really liked the main character and kind of everyone else just felt a little flat. Not even flat, but just secondary.
Very henna artist.
I'm going to go 3, I think. Prose, I'm going to go 3. The prose was fine for me. The vibes, I would probably just going to also go 3, I think. I mean, I enjoyed, I'm glad I read it. Was it my favorite book this season? No. And that is a 3.6. I gave it a 3.75. So that is a fine, but not to get ahead of ourselves in our season rankings, that is probably towards the upper echelons of my fines for this season.
Okay. Well, you're going to hear about those rankings really soon.
In next week's episode, where we're reading my pick, and guess what? It's a repeat pod author. We are reading The Marriage Portrait by Maggie O'Farrell.
And it is our last book of the season.
Which is crazy. This has been an 18-book season.
It is really long. Granted, there were more books in season 3, but they were not books that took long to read.
And also, we doubled up on episodes.
That's true.
Like, we doubled up on books per episode. So
yeah, so we didn't have 18 episodes, I don't think.
All right. But in the meantime, make sure you're following us on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at 5o'flop_pod. And we're almost done with our Storygraph reading challenge. You should join while you still have time, as if we're going to delete it forever. But
no,
we won't.
All the other ones are still up.
So honestly, go and join all of them and go read all of our children's books right now.
Exactly. If you have a book that you think we should read for next season, you can fill out the recommendation form in the bio of any of our social media. Or you can just send us an email if you have any other general query at 5o'floppodcast@gmail.com.
And until our season finale,
happy reading!
Bye!